Okay, today we are going to be talking about heterozygosity. By the end of this lecture, you should be able to differentiate a heterozygous from a homozygous genotype and explain how genotype influences phenotype. So, when I was growing up, Jennifer Aniston was like the it girl. She had blonde hair and blue eyes. She was a famous actress on Friends. And I was like, dang, I do not look like Jennifer Aniston. Now, why don't I have blonde hair? Why are my eyes brown? And by understanding how genotypes influence phenotypes, we can gain some insight into these kinds of questions. So, quick review. Nucleotide base pairs make up the double-stranded helix that make up our genes and our DNA that's organized into chromosomes and found in the nucleus of the cell. We've also learned that genes are transcribed and translated to make proteins that do the work in our bodies. But let's not forget that we inherit two chromosomes, right? One from our mom and one from our dad. And this means that we actually have two copies of every gene. We've also learned how mutations can change the base pair sequences in our DNA and can end up potentially creating different proteins based on those sequences. So what happens in these situations? What happens when we have different versions of a gene? Well, let's go through some terminology. First, we have our homologous chromosomes that have the same structure and carry the same genetic information. When we talk about a gene locus, we're just referring to a specific location, physical location on a chromosome where you can find a gene. An allele is a different version of a gene. So here we have a big A and a little a. They're different, so they have differences in those base pair sequences, right? A genotype just refers to your combination of alleles. So here, this genotype is big A, little a, which is an example of a heterozygous genotype because it has two different alleles, big A and little a. That's in contrast to a homozygous genotype, which is a genotype with two of the same alleles. Here we have little b and little b. All right, let's test our understanding. I'd like you to tell me which of the following best describes this little b. If you chose an allele in a homozygous genotype, you are correct. Here our genotype is little b, same alleles, homozygous, and this little b is just one of those two alleles. Again, what happens when we have different versions of a gene? Let's think about these two genotypes. We have homozygous big A, and homozygous little a. They don't have any shared alleles, right? So let's imagine that they make these two different proteins that result in different fur color in mice. This genotype leads to this protein and brown fur. This genotype, this protein, white fur. So we can see how differences in genotypes can lead to different proteins that result in different phenotypes. But wait, what's a phenotype? A phenotype is just an observable trait. So in this case, we can switch out trait for phenotype. Another example of a phenotype or trait is eye color. You can have either the trait for brown eyes or blue eyes. Let's imagine for eye color, if you have a big A genotype, you make a protein that results in a brown eye phenotype. If you're heterozygous, you have big A, little a. Let's say you make a lot more of this protein, just a little bit of this protein, so you still end up having the brown eye phenotype. If you're homozygous for little a, let's say you just make this protein that results in the blue eye phenotype. So again, we can see how differences in genotype can lead to different proteins that result in different phenotypes. Next week, we will be thinking about why heterozygosity is important. So before you take off, let's do a quick think, pair, share. I'd like you to think about the previous example to explain why Jennifer Aniston and I have different eye colors. And as a quick disclaimer, I know that my brown eyes are beautiful and you are beautiful with the phenotype that you have. All right, stop being corny now. Have a great day, guys. Bye.